Welcome to Public Access Poetry. Tonight I'll be reading first. My name is Charles Bernstein. And the first poem that I'll be reading is called As If the Trees by Their Very Roots Had Hold of Us. Strange to remember a visit really not so long ago, which now seems finally past. Always it's a kind of obvious thing, I guess, amazed by that cycle. That first you anticipate a thing and it seems far off. The distance has a weight you can feel hanging on you. And then it's there, that point, whatever, which now, while it's happening, seems to be constantly slipping away, like the sand through your fingers in an old movie, until you can only look back on it, and yet you're still there, staring at your thoughts in the window of the fire you find yourself before. We've gone over this 1,000 times, and here again, combing that same section of beach or inseam for that, I'm no longer sure when or exactly where, and yet the peering, unrewarding as it is in terms of tangible results, seems so necessary. Hope, which is, after all, no more than a splint of thought projected outward, looking to catch somewhere. What can I say here that the ease or difficulty of such memories doesn't preclude that harsher necessity of going on always in a new place, under different circumstances? And yet, we don't seem to have changed. It's as if these years that have gone by are all a matter of record. But if the real facts were known, we were still reeling from what seems to have just happened, but which, by the accountant's keeping, occurred years ago. Years ago. It hardly seems possible. So little really has happened. We shore ourselves hour by hour in anticipation that soon there will be nothing to do. Pack a sandwich and let's eat later. And of course, the anticipation is quite appropriate, accounting, for the most part, for whatever activity we do manage. Eternally buzzing over the time, unable to live in it. Maybe if we go up a ways, we can get a better view. But of course, in that sense, views don't improve. In the present moment, if we could only see it, which is to say, to begin with, stop looking with such anticipation. What is unfolding before us puts to rest any necessity for progression. So, more of these tracings, as if by some magic of the phonetic property of these squiggles, or does that only mystify the power of presence, which is, as well, a sort of postponement? Loose shoes. That's the trouble around here, through which, asking as it does a different kind of space, who much like any other relives what's noise, a better shoe, plants its own destination, shooting up at a vacant which is forever unreconstituted wedding party, rituals in which, acting out of a synonymous disclosure that here loses all transference, falling back to, in, what self-same dwelling is otherwise unaccounted for. They make several steps. Alone the boot straps only an extra heaviness, but for all the world knows the better in the offing. Walking around, trying to keep a stiffened sleeve, coffee pouring over all manner of suit. He beats us all the way down there, since, not Russian, we no longer care about big cigars. A patterned sock hugs the boot, surfaces several spiraling reminders to fill up the glasses and get the next carapace over with. begin the quiet, which always seems imposed. Caravans of blank personalities file before judgment, choice a matter of boosting the inseam and making ends due. A series of truncated tips, fibers emergent from large industrial rolling machines, mahogany solids vertically stacked aside blue jeans, soap bubbles, starry eyes. My own best memory is dried, sits happily amidst cushions and packages from Altman's. A serial horror that gradually resolves into what have you, makes speakers recircuit their origin, projecting from which chair, sideways, and put away in your pocket. My hand claims its own boundaries. Pretension, fits of troubled labor described as such, sordid business, at last remain on the other side, noiselessly. It releases its own tension, pinstripe after boulevard, having heard all about it. I went over very well by them, he thought. No, this seems much the more graceful. Embers indiscernibly fly by and seem to illuminate the particulate nature of the air. Dress warmly, making a film about you, us. I feel only a temporary relief. The idea of recurrence, temporary nonsense, to make a way seem possible by an accountant's time, real time by any other standard, and yet, in a way, irreproducible, which hedge gives space to breathe a little more freely. The next poem is called Ballet Russe. Every person has feeling. It is all the same. I will travel. I love nature. I love motion and dancing. I did not understand God. I have made mistakes. Bad deeds are terrible. I suffered. My wife is frightened. The stock exchange is death. I am against all drugs. My scalp is strong and hard. I like it when it is necessary. It is a lovely drive. A branch is not a root. Handwriting is a lovely thing. I like czars and aristocrats. An airplane is useful. One should permanently help the poor. My wife wants me to go to Zurich. Politics are death. All young men do silly things. The Spaniards are terrible people because they murder bulls. My wife suffered a great deal because of her mother. I will tell the whole truth. I love Russia. I am nasty. I am terrified of being locked up and losing my work. Mental agony is a terrible thing. I pretend to be a very nervous man. This next poem is called St-Mk-K. Graphemic hinges discourse, reordering signs of few little, which speed and which intersentential connections theirs splendid, here too, in not forced stuff, the rest of piecemeal spins off ethical intrude with that kind of schizophalic categories enfolding a proper place, fixist opting for a so fine isn't turn face to a inevitable picturesque balk, desire tokened by topology, the C or Verfremdungseffect, autonomous explosions taste as blocks circling, like star, flamingo, air, leap, as if we had not gleaned in a possible vectorate these, the issued canopy as scratch, rune, potential a sonority, the pull, buckle me with a pat, I leap up, sights ideally, being happens, not Spartan, polishes, to face, egg, am, visit, subdue, impulse, hilarity. This next is called Roseland. You need some way of, some set of. You live in a place. It isn't much. You move out. You have to. You live at the edge. Your memory has let you down. A kind of chaos when you go, if you face it. This axis, the human order, more or less. You have a map. You put yourself in position and try to. This is a human construction. You try out the space. Try to. You drive on them. Go straight. One might imagine. Only grasping. A pity. A pile of rocks, more or less. And place the wander for, not proceed, is still a little an edge, unless the habit, land of, boomerang say, carvings, all of the circles, so that what we have is a network, and that's all. A sequence of camping sites is arbitrarily adapted, which was shape, very much a matter of there will be a woman, of anxiety, which is to the career, some premonition, the appearance of white, the fixing, when the time comes, edicts and statues, in some unexplained, has the nostalgia, and that's as talking of some other blind man, exists in space, an overall kind of thing, can't flip, or more information of any kind. The passage is nothing, one thing in particular, a technique of erasing, and people could start. It's not two. That is real, and how it, or you hope, you get ready, you work on it, a literal culture, a piece of sand, in such an elaborate way, an art of naming, a kind of, that is danced, as among, a residue, from the milk, notion of a goes in, of entrance, if you use stone, as required, in such a system. You use language, or some set of, if you face it. Long trails of cars returning from the beach. I saw the power of the word in legend, cast shadows and I hid under, lasting, crevices making jetty markers stretching out to sea. An infinite strip, lengths landscaped against a red sun, might in any case be lustrous. The experience of the citation I find myself in, a book popping up and getting out, searches for its last exposure. You get up, you want to. The day begins like any other. The sky mists, a pale obscurity fog. Sustenance consists, break signs against rocks, support mechanisms in which dirt, field, soft, is sustained, propping up a checkerboard of items, products then, as if for itself could be more a fashion of holding back. We gain nothing, for nothing is disguised. Long trails of cars returning from the beach, a congestion of sand, fume, desire, packed by the interest that a particular pollution will give way to some more sensible sight. It continues. The wire pops from underneath the road, far into New Jersey. An idea of green that keeps going, excruciating in the habiting of a space you can't move within, defined specifically with an intention to give up use for whatever length of time can be sustained, which means preconceived, this annoyance that you get it wrong that jerks through us. Person makes coercion, as if by force a certainty can be achieved. These gaps jump too far, a fetid decay of smoldering ideas stacked up like dead newspapers hoarded for a conviction that there was past, that something previous, prior to, the day before, was nonetheless at some times news, its weather, a movement of press that overtakes us, in which we are cradled. I ask for this memory, not to think, breaks apart, lets be an order, sinks into, is it only a folding with which enthusiasm realizes several glimpses? Motion to make a glance, an array of pass by, is constantly for the reaching, makes plain a hungering for a place within that neighborliness always just outside our own, a mutual exclusion, standing at the beach and Peter allowing the cameras to snap.